Okay, so now we're going to talk about the body of the document itself. We discussed a little bit about pagination in the previous slide. So the preliminary pages are paginated with lowercase Roman numerals, except for those first 3 pages. They're counted in the pagination, but the numbers aren't printed on the page. So you could have 10 preliminary pages, 35 preliminary pages, it doesn't matter. When you get to the beginning of the document itself, chapter 1 or the introduction chapter, you're going to start the pagination over with a normal Arabic 1. And the pagination will continue from that point on every page. Figure pages, references, appendices, all of those pages will be paginated sequentially from that beginning of the document. The margins of the document are 1.5 inches on the left and the top and 1 inch on the right and the bottom, and that's true for every page. Preliminary pages, figures, appendices, every page needs to fit into those margins. And these margins are not what Word will give you when you first open up a document, so you need to make the adjustment. We do the margins like this for a number of reasons. The 1.5 inches on the left is the binding edge, and when the documents are bound, we want to leave space for that binding. And basically because the margins have been this way for years and we want the consistency to remain among documents at UCR. Widows and orphans. Widows and orphans are something that we want to avoid, and it sounds sad. Just think of them as lonely lines. So the widow line is the last line of a paragraph left alone at the top of the page. The orphan line is the first line of a paragraph left alone at the bottom of the page. And we want to avoid these. We want to think about our lines having buddies. So always make sure there's at least 2 lines at the top and the bottom. I'm not concerned with a little bit of extra white space if you're moving that orphan line onto the next page. We'd rather have that than an orphan line. Also, what you want to think about is if you have a heading left alone at the bottom of the page, that we want to avoid that also. So make sure your heading also has some text under it. So widows and orphans are something you want to look at when you're absolutely done with the document. You're not going to be entering any more text because you just may be creating more widows and orphans. So it's something that you want to wait until the very, very end, and you'll check on that. Use your software also. Word, you can set, there's settings you can do to avoid widows and orphans. LaTeX, you can lower the tolerance for widows and orphans. So whatever software you're using, check and see if you can do this automatically instead of having to manually fix these types of things. Tables, figures, and captions. So I'm going to show you a few examples of what you can do and what's acceptable. The first type of figure and caption that is quite common is a figure and the caption are embedded in the text. So you have a little bit of text, you have your figure and your caption, and the text continues after that. That's fine. What's nice about this sample is there's a good amount of space between the caption and the beginning of the text. If you just leave a double space between the caption and the text, the reader has a tendency to get confused and not really realize that the caption is there. So this is a good example of how to embed your figure in the text. Another example is the figure and the caption are on its own page. So your figure is too large, there's no point in putting some text on either side of it, so that's fine. It can have its own page. The caption is there also. These types of pages can be included throughout the chapter. They can be grouped at the back of each chapter or grouped at the back of the document. That's completely fine. Another option that you have is to do a landscaped figure or table in this case. That's fine. If a table like this wouldn't fit portrait style, so we've shifted it landscape. What you want to think about in that case is the page number. The page number still has to be portrait style on all landscaped figures and captions. So you want to make sure that you're shifting your page number down to the bottom. If you're using Word, it's going to automatically put the page number over here on the bottom of the landscape figure, so you want to shift it down here. You can do that within the software. Since you're doing a printed thesis, another easy way to do it is to simply print the table with no page number on it, and then print the page number on the bottom using a different file. So you're just running the same page through the printer twice. That's one of the low-tech way tends to be the simplest way with this problem. Another way to do your figures and captions are facing page. And this is if you have a really large caption and a really large figure and they just won't fit together on the same page. When you do facing page, you do need to switch the margin. The left and right margins are switched, so the 1.5 inches is now on the right-hand side because this becomes the binding edge. So the document will be bound in the center here, so we need 1.5 inches on the right. Overall, the document needs to be double spaced. Obviously, there's some exceptions, so you saw some exceptions in the sample preliminary pages. Some other notable exceptions are your captions. Those can be single spaced. If you have a long quotation, that's fine. In creative writing, there's several, circumstances where you can have single spacing in dialogue or poetry. That's fine. And if you have a question, just contact our office and we can talk about what's okay to leave single spaced. Overall, the type size needs to be 10, 11, or 12 point. We're looking for consistency, so if you decide to use 10 point, that needs to be 10 point throughout the document. If you have figures that have little labels in it that need a smaller font, that's fine. Mostly we're just checking to make sure that it's legible. Can I still read it? But overall, again, we're looking for consistency. Use of color is acceptable. You can use color in your figures, that's fine. The printed theses, the paper must be white, 8.5 by 11 size, and acid-free. Acid-free is quite common. Just check the packaging that the paper is in, and it should tell you there that it's acid-free. The type on the paper must be clear, so you don't have to use a laser printer. You can use a DeskJet printer, that's fine, or you can use a Xerox machine, that's fine. But just make sure that it's clear, there's no smudges or gray areas on the page, and you're printing only on one side of the page.